Governor Wildstar, is it okay if I join you for a second?
Please do. Have a seat.
Good to meet you, sir.
Good to meet you, and thank you for sitting down.
Oh,
and,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Hanging out with me.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, you're joining us here live. We're interviewing Libertarian / Republican, we'll get to that in a second, candidate for Governor Nickolas Wildstar, and just an easy listening session right here. We're going to cover some of the elections, what it means to Californians, and what that could possibly mean for the future of this place going forward. The elections are still unrolling right now, so we're not taking a definitive conclusion, but we wanted to talk to somebody who's in the game, is meeting people, and follows politics on where you think things are going. And particularly, what I was fascinated by was there's a lot of results coming out of this elections that are not about just the top two presidential candidates. We're able to make some initial conclusions, but I don't hear anybody talking about it. You know, they want to go for the big show. There's other aspects to cover, so we'll cover that in a second.
Absolutely.
First, I got to take a...
Please do. Imbibe as you please.
That's smooth marijuana flavor you just can't get enough of. Coming at you straight from Cali.
I love the impersonation. I won't do that, but please, by all means.
Well, it's the 1950s. I'm sorry. He agreed I could do a Walter Cronkite moment, okay? So, it's not a cigarette. That's California legal.
Yes.
But
hemp, actually.
Hemp, yes. Yes, not cannabis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
It's still cannabis, not marijuana. Cannabis has two different plants, so hemp and marijuana. So this is hemp.
Okay.
Smells like it, but
yeah,
not as potent, you know.
Well, now you got the first one. That was the first tough question you already
All
nailed.
right,
so
good to know.
So let's go right into it.
Excuse me.
You were saying a couple things about the Libertarian Party and Libertarian politics. One of the things that I've noticed with the newspapers today was saying 2/3 of Californians voted for Biden and really repudiated or voted against Trump. They were disgusted by his values. But an interesting subline has been that it wasn't all progressive voting for Californians. In fact, many of the ballot initiatives were from an anti-tax, pro-business climate.
Absolutely.
And so I've seen very little coverage about what's going on here. I thought California is all super lefty liberals. Why are lefty liberals standing for California values, but doing something they used to see the Republican Party do, standing for low taxes and low regulation? Thoughts, opinions? Have you noticed this? And can you explain to the people what's going on?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing is that they took the people of California and underestimated them in their position on conservative issues, like what you brought up, more tax increases, and nobody wants to be taxed, period. Whether you're part of the working class, whether you're rich, or, you know, one of those people that are working paycheck to paycheck, you know, struggling to get by. Nobody likes taxes. And the people of California, unanimously in some positions, pretty much shot down all of the bond measures and tax increases that were proposed on the ballot. We also voted overwhelmingly to restore the voting rights of felons in the state, which you wouldn't think would be a position that a liberal state such as California would be against. But they voted for it in support of it, and that definitely took an effort on the conservatives, or on the conservative side as well, because no ballot would definitely pass if it didn't have support from both the right and left. And also we had the people of California stand up for, you know, independent contractors and people having the right to work. So they passed Prop 22, which allows rideshare drivers for companies like Uber and Lyft and DoorDash, etc., be able to continue to work for themselves as independent contractors, which actually creates now a loophole for them from AB 5, which is a bill that prevents people from working as an independent contractor in the state. So it says a lot about the California values and principles and ideas that we want and are demanding from our representatives. But they definitely underestimated the people in California, and with them seeing now that they're gravitating towards supporting libertarian policies, that to me feels like the right atmosphere and climate for me to step in as a Libertarian Republican and offer what I'd like to do for the state as governor.
That was one of the things that grabbed me, was that I'd been talking to you for a few months, and you had epitomized this early on, in my opinion. Others may have different opinions, but what I saw was somebody who was pro-BLM, anti-Trump, but very much dedicated to preserving CA values, but also intolerant of high taxes and high regulation, and willing to speak up for the middle class and small business owners, and saying,
Absolutely.
you know, this is not fair. And so I saw a very pro-business, pro-working family, still protect progressive values candidate. And you yourself said, if I may put this out there, sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it feels like I'm the only one. Sometimes I go to some of these Libertarian Republican meetings and they're like, you're what and what?
Right.
So, I mean, could you talk a little bit about that? Is that a unique stance before this election? Because I think it's about to explode now that we've seen, it seems like Californians are also feeling the way you were.
Yeah.
So was it a unique stance before this election?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I read the room and I kind of felt the temperature, so to speak, from speaking with voters themselves. You know, being on the campaign trail, I've had the honor to meet hundreds of, if not thousands of people face to face and speak with them and see what it is that they truly want out of their government. And just kind of seeing the trend and that demand starting to grow. At times it did feel like I was the only one in the room. Sometimes it still feels that way. But just knowing that what I'm being said, or what I am saying, is also being echoed by the populace, definitely lets me know that I have that support base there. It's just all a matter of connecting with them and letting them know that I exist and that I'm offering to be a representative for them. That's where the media comes into play to pretty much silence me as a candidate. I felt like that's what they did.
In a second.
Yeah. They definitely, use their powers to make sure that they are keeping the public from knowing all of the options that they're going to have on the ballot.
I want to ask you an awkward, do you care if I finish this?
Oh, no, not at all. Please, go ahead.
While I'm lighting this up, California legal, I want to ask you a question that might get you into a lot of trouble. You don't have to answer it, and you can answer it however you want. It'll be shared unedited. If we have California voters today saying, I like low taxes, low regulation, pro-business climate, and protection of California values, and that seems to be the way the majority of Californians feel, why the hell didn't anyone pick up on this before? Why were you alone? Why were you different? How come you weren't one of a bunch of new class of people? I mean, why are you picking up on this? Nobody else is, in the Libertarians or the Republicans, it seems to me. And then it seems to be where Californians are. How do major parties miss where the actual voting base is? And why did you pick up on it and they didn't? In your words.
Well, in my opinion, they're still out of touch with the demands and needs of the people that they claim to want to represent. Mainly because they're still focused on what they're assuming that the public knows versus actually speaking with them and trying to find out for themselves. I've been lucky enough to be involved in those circles due to my political activism, and whether it's a Black Lives Matter protest for a police shooting, or a women's rights issue, or going out and helping the homeless community, just speaking with them and having that interaction, you're able to gauge, again, what the growing concerns are and demands are for the people in the state. And although these political parties would like to still represent them, whether it be the Libertarian Party or the Republican Party or even the Democratic Party for that matter, they're still assuming and acting as if they know what's best for the constituency, versus actually speaking with the constituents themselves and finding out from them firsthand. I feel like that's where I've had the upper hand as a candidate, because you even have candidates that take, the grassroots effort and going door to door and being the boots on the ground. They take that effort for granted as well. So they don't do it at all. They just hope that they can buy their way into an election. You have major candidates out there collecting tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars in campaign donations, thinking they can just buy an election. And what history has proven to us is no matter if you win or not, if you spend that amount of money, especially if you lose, it's a wasted effort. So all of the money in the world isn't going to get you into office. It has to be where you stand on policies and what if you're a principled individual.
So what I think I hear you saying is the reason that you were taking the stance that you did months ago, and it was very lonely, but then we're seeing evidence today, these couple days, that it matches the way the majority of California voters is that you were actually out there meeting the voters.
Right.
And perhaps the leadership of the other parties were not.
Exactly.
And so they came to different ground truths than perhaps you espoused.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. Unfortunately, you still have politics within these political parties. You have a hierarchy, you have the chair and the executives who want to dictate how members can be involved with the party itself. I experienced that from my time being involved in the Libertarian Party, which is why I'm running as a Republican now, but I'm not seeking a Republican Party nomination.
Right.
So if I can prove to the Republican Party and the GOP that I have the people behind me, that should be all that they need to then support me and my efforts. So that's why I'm hoping that people show up March 8th in 2022, if not sooner, if this recall election is successful, but show up and vote for me and give me the opportunity to actually compete in maybe the general election if I get a chance to, or if not, overwhelmingly vote me in as governor.
I want to get to that, but I wanted to hit on something else you said, but I need to make a quick mention, and you tell me if I'm getting this correct. So you are a libertarian. You stand for California values, but you're running as a Republican. And the thing that you explained to me was that they rigged the system against us. So you used to have the Green Party. I've been talking with Michael Feinstein. You used to have the Libertarian Party. They were much larger. And then a few years ago, the Democrats and Republicans got together and changed the law where it basically made it impossible for third parties to exist.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about that? Is that what you're saying? Is like, hey, I would have ran as a Libertarian, but you rigged the system so I don't even get to do that. Now the only option is Republican or Democrat.
Exactly.
That's a fair summary?
Absolutely. I mean, with the top two system that they've created, the law that you're talking about, it alienated every other person in the state that wanted to have a different option other than Republican or Democrat. So now, because of it, here in the state of California, whether it's 2 Republicans or 2 Democrats that get the majority in the primary, those are the only 2 options that we get to choose from as voters in the general election. So opposed to before, like you said, in the general election, whether it been a Republican, Democrat, Green Party, or Libertarian candidate, if they got nominated by their party, then they then would be represented on the November election ballot. So the two, came together and in cahoots with each other, chose to, again, discriminate against these other parties who could actually put them out of office had more people had an opportunity to hear what they had to say. So it's extremely discriminatory, and unfortunately it's an uphill battle because in order to change that law, we'd still be asking the same legislative body that supported it to change it. So that's what makes it difficult. But with me running as a Libertarian Republican, it does give me the opportunity to use that larger playing field to not only be heard by a greater audience, but to also be taken seriously. Unfortunately, a lot of people feel as if libertarians don't have a chance, so they either won't vote for them, or on the media side, they'll just ignore them completely because they assume that, again, they don't have a shot. But in the last election in 2018, when I ran against Gavin Newsom, I gathered about 12,000 votes, and that was with the minimal attention that I was able to receive from the mainstream, machine. But now with me running as a Republican, hopefully that opens some doors for me to be heard from some conservative outlets, as well as some of those liberal ones as well, since they like to pit the two against each other. They only talk about the Republican and the Democrat and them opposing each other. So it's more so feeding into the fears and opposition to promote people to vote in a retaliatory way. If they're a staunch Democrat or a staunch Republican, then they're only going to see their opposition,
Right.
So to level the playing field, I am again stepping up as a Republican, but I'm proposing the same libertarian ideals that I did during my 2018 campaign for governor.
They rigged the game, so you have to play the game the way they allow you to play it.
Yeah.
And that's your only option if you want to play it all.
Yeah, even Kamala Harris, when she got elected as senator, she was running against another Democrat, Nancy Pelosi. This year, she was up for re-election for Senate seat, and she was up against another Democrat. So the Democrats have it on lock because they know in the state of California that they'll continue to be able to stay in power, even if, of course, they have to run against themselves, essentially. But the Republicans are having a difficult time penetrating through that themselves. So that's why I'm encouraging all of those Republicans out there to support me, because with what I'm offering to do as a Libertarian Republican, all of my proposals are to bridge that gap, is to make both the people on the right and the left happy. So if these are policies that are going to be supported by the majority of people in the state, then why not make me your candidate of choice?
Right. Okay. If I have your permission, I'd like to return to something you said I found quite intriguing.
All right.
One of the other observations of this election that's not being talked about a whole lot was that money wasn't everything, and politics seemed to count. You made 2 points about money was the loser, and also and I think you were pointing out an example of what you call the red hatters.
Yeah.
African American red hat politicians.
Yes.
Could you, in the way you explained it to me, could you tell them what you noticed and what that means for politics now, and how that changes the conclusion that some of the experts felt it was always this way?
Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, the Republican National Convention, where Trump introduced his platinum plan to essentially provide over $500 billion of influx investment into the Black community, he invited the 27 candidates that were seeking to become members of Congress throughout the country. And this included Kim Klacik. I believe she was running for Baltimore.
Yes.
In Baltimore, she had a viral video on YouTube.
A good commercial,
Absolutely.
Whether you liked her or not. Good. Yeah. That was a solid commercial.
Indeed, it was. And it pointed out a lot of, those issues that the Black community, of course, would like to have remedied in some way.
Right.
Same thing with Joe Collins. He was a Republican candidate running against Maxine Waters in Los Angeles. And both of these candidates, along with, like I said, 25 others, were invited to the Republican National Convention, all Black Republicans, but the red hats. They're supporters of Trump and what he represents as a Republican. And 25 of them lost. Only 2 were able to succeed. So that goes to show you that the millions of dollars that were put into all of those candidates' campaigns pretty much was for all for naught. And it's not an investment that we should be willing to make as a community. That's how you know that the donators, the people that donated the money, the financiers,
Yeah.
they were special interest groups, you know, because they had a vested interest in if those candidates were to succeed versus the people of California, the people of those neighborhoods, etc. They're focused more so on the merits of the person and the values that they represent. And again, if you're taking that for granted, it doesn't matter how much money you spend, you're going to lose. And I definitely don't, which is why I tell people it doesn't take $1 million for me to win an election. It takes 1 million votes. That's it. And I can get 1 million votes off of, you know, a dime if you give me the opportunity to. Because if you know where to spend it, how to invest it, and make it stretch, then you can make it count. And if it's just making sure that the people of California and you know, those that have an opportunity to vote for you actually know you exist, are familiar with you as a candidate, get a bit of name recognition. That's all it takes. Unfortunately, it's still a popularity contest. And the more I become popular as a candidate, the greater of a threat I will be to the establishment, because that just means I'm even closer to winning. And I won't need all of their money to do so.
We'll get to you being a threat to the system in a second. But I needed to ask two things that I observed that I think relate to what you're talking about. You tell me if that's how you see it too.
Okay.
Andrew Jans recently ran for election here a couple of years ago, and he ran on I think it was Devin Nunes bad, Trump bad, Russia bad, and he had a lot of money and a lot of airtime, and he completely got spanked.
Yep, lost. Same thing in the mayoral race.
Okay, so that's another example of money, donations, fame, and what do you stand on? Well, whatever my donors are telling me to say doesn't necessarily grab votes to win.
Right.
The other example is, I'd like to ask your opinion on, is Joe Biden's campaign received a lot of money, and it appears he's barely going to beat Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
So all this cash and all the media saying Trump's horrible, and all the celebrities going for Biden. I mean, Biden had all the celebrities, all the media, all the money, and he's barely going to win.
Yeah.
Which, you know, you add those up, and it seems to say, because I saw an interview with, it was 3 African American women on MSNBC, and they go, "You're voting for Biden," and they go, "I don't know." What do you mean you don't know?
It's just an automatic assumption.
Yeah,
because
and
of their skin color.
That's literally what they said. It's on MSNBC. They got 3 young girls out there, and, you know, I'm sure they expected them to just say what they were on TV. And they said, "Are you voting for Biden?" "Well, I don't know. I want to, you know, see what's up." They go, "Well, hold on now. You realize his running mate's Kamala Harris." And they go, "And?"
Exactly.
They
what does that mean?
And I think one of them said she had things she had to make right, and she didn't do that.
That's a good answer.
That's
somebody that paid attention to their record. Unfortunately, lots of people didn't do that, which is why he's in the lead right now. But I feel like that's why he's also not the president yet. Is because you did have people that paid attention to it, and they weren't fully invested into giving him their support, which is why they either stayed on the fence with their decision, or they chose to vote for Trump, or one of the other candidates that were running, Kanye West, even, who gathered up, I believe, about 60,000 votes nationwide. So that's a good chunk of people that wanted to see him be president, opposed to the 2 candidates that they propped up in these debates and told us these are the only choices that you're going to have, which is a complete lie, of course, because, again, you had Kanye West, of all people, on ballots throughout the country, and the Libertarian candidate, Jo Jorgensen, who was on a ballot across all 50 states. Yeah, she did very well. Not as well as, of course, the party had hoped. They were hoping she'd get at least 5%, so she could qualify for any future, Libertarian presidential candidate could qualify for public funding.
Sure.
That's mainly why. They want to make sure that they have assistance there with campaign donations. So, and also to be included in future debates as well. So if you qualify over 5%, then I guess those are the benefits. But yeah, all of the money that was spent on the Biden campaign, all of the promotions that they put out there on YouTube and Facebook and, you know, all the viral videos was all for naught, you know?
Yeah.
So it's we're starting to see the trend that, again, people are starting to pay more attention to what's going on with their political representatives and what they're offering to do. And Andrew Jans is a perfect example of it. You would think with all of the support that he had received in his run against Devin Nunes when he ran for mayor of Fresno, he still lost.
Yeah.
You know, and all of that steam just petered out at the end. I even did an interview with him myself. I actually went to a town hall meeting that he had, and I asked him about guns in the inner cities and what was his proposal, since he was talking about basically his gun control or his position on guns. And I asked him, well, what will you do to restore black people's rights to make sure that they're able to carry a weapon, carry a gun
legally?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I asked him about AK-47s. I think that was what he was originally talking about, was nobody needed to have an AK-47. Well, why would you dictate gun law at all? You know, especially seeing as if, again, a black man can have a handgun or even a collapsible baton in the state of California, which is a felony, and you could be arrested for it, for a weapons violation. Or, if worse, it could lead to your death, you know? We definitely want to reduce the amount of threat that is being seen by people with guns, especially legal gun owners. And his answer was pretty much just to dance around the question, as all politicians do, instead of speaking about it directly. So, but he lost here in Fresno for mayor. All the money that was funded into, funneled into his campaign pretty much went away. And now we have a Republican mayor here in Fresno, someone who was the police chief and had a record that was awful, you know.
We'll do another show. That's a whole
that's a whole
other
show.
We're both Fresno,
but even still, he didn't get a chance to unseat him, and you would think that would be easy for him to do with him being the prosecutor. So, with them both being representatives of law enforcement, he lost.
I just see a lot of parallels, like you said. The red hat Republicans, who were African American, got all this money, all this fame, and it didn't play out for them.
Exactly.
And then you flip it on the other one. Here's Jance, right? Let's go to the other side. Here's Jance. I'm going to say everything people in New York City and San Francisco want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that don't work here. People want to hear what you're actually talking about. So all this money and fame didn't do anything. And then we go to Biden, a lot of money, and Kamala was supposed to bring the fame, and it was hilarious to see the MSNBC reporters, like, they had a mask on, but you could literally see their eyes go.
Right.
Like their eyes went like from here to like smoke coming out of their ears. Yeah. They were going, well, you're an African American young woman. You're of course supporting Kamala, and they're like,
yeah, it's the pandering.
I got to think for They basically said, why can't I think for myself?
Yeah, exactly, and that's what again they take for granted, is they think that if they pander to one group in particular or one special interest group or whatever the case may be, that they'll be wholeheartedly behind supporting them. And that's not true. No group across the board is monolithic in their being. We're all individuals. We're all independent thinkers. And, Biden's campaign ended up experiencing that, trying to pander to the black community and the Hispanic community. He went on an interview and played some some song in front of the audience, which was Hispanic. And I guess he thought that was going to win him over the Hispanic vote. And Andrew Jans, of all people, he was, I believe he's half Asian. Yeah. And he had pandered to the API community here in Fresno, which is one of the largest in the entire nation. We have one of the largest Hmong populations
which is
here
great.
in Fresno. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah.
But
love it.
He thought that he was secure in getting their vote, and he didn't.
Turns out they viewed themselves as citizens who have the right to think for themselves and make a decision based upon their own values.
Yes. And believe it or not, I spoke with a lot of them, and they were gun owners. And we're supportive of gun rights. And
that's just crazy. People think they have the right to research and make up their own opinions, and that they expect the people they're going to vote for to say what it is you're going to do, and that I have the right to make a decision based upon that, even if I'm not Caucasian. What a radical concept. radical concept. Maybe someday.
Yeah, and then they're reliant upon the political pundits and the, I guess, people that go out there and do the polling to provide them with that information. Well, when you do a poll, unless you're polling every single person, you're only providing results for percentage, which doesn't reflect the majority. So all of these polls that came out and said Biden would win, in a landslide. Way wrong again. Exactly. So we need to start focusing on, I would say we the people need to start focusing on where these politicians and where the government is dropping the ball. And on the flip side of that, I as a candidate, that's where I feel like I have the advantage, because I'm not taking what they have to say for granted. I am still a working class member of society, and somebody that wants to better my community and see the betterment of my entire city, if not state, if possible. So with me having that connection with the actual people themselves, I think that's what, again, is going to advance me as the people's choice for governor.
Let's get, okay, and that's a good review of everything. I really appreciate your time on this. Now, I've saved the most controversial question for last. And we can cover anything else you want to after, but I wanted people to get to know you, get to see that you are a real political animal who understands the calculus that it takes to play this game.
Indeed.
And I feel that you all have seen that. I've seen it. So let me ask you the tough question. You did an interview with a man called Sam Chaney talking about reforming AB 392.
Correct.
That interview was taken down.
Yeah.
Then you did an interview with a man, Stevante Clark, and that was taken down. And then you did a second interview, I believe, with Stevante Clark, and that was taken down.
Yeah.
Now, all three of these interviews were taken down, and all three of them had to do with AB 392. Could you tell us what AB 392 reform is that you're talking about, and without going down the rabbit hole and giving ammo to your critics as saying, you're a conspiracy theorist, why does someone apparently find that very threatening?
Absolutely. Well, number one, I'm a high-profile candidate running for governor. So if I'm actually successful, and with the message being heard by many, that makes me a threat to the establishment. But with AB 392, the Stephon Clark law, Stevante Clark is his brother. And Stephon Clark was a black man that was shot and killed in his grandparents' backyard.
Sacramento.
Correct. And cops believed he had a gun in his hand, which is why, again, respecting people's right to own a firearm is essential, especially for law enforcement, because it would alleviate that threat. But they thought he had a gun in his hand when it was actually a cell phone, and they shot and killed him. And the current governor, Governor Gavin Newsom, signed a bill into law, the Stephon Clark law, which is named after him, last summer. Since then, there's been over 130 officer-involved shootings. Almost next to none of them have been held accountable. So, and the Clark family actually backed out of supporting a bill that was named after, a family member that they had lost. Not to mention, Black Lives Matter was wanting the founding authors of the bill, and they dropped their support afterwards also. And that was mainly because these Democratic legislators, and were receiving funding from police unions and decided to gut that bill completely to make it ineffective. So we have this law in the books that's essentially supposed to reduce the amount of excessive force used by police officers, yet it's null and void because of the context of it. So again, we've seen hundreds of people get shot and killed and or assaulted by police officers here in the state. So the bill is ineffective in a sense. I spoke about this in my interview with Sam Chaney on Weaponized News, and I let him know I'm working with CalExit on making sure that if we are unsuccessful in making sure that our legislators actually sign that bill into law, reform it in its original text, that we're going to push to secede and separate the state of California away from the entire country, and that way we can have a true opportunity to enact real criminal justice reform. I believe that was threatening to them. I also said this during my interview with Devontae Clark, and let him know about me working with CalExit, and to basically also let him know that this would be the best option. And he saw the Stephon Clark law as being some progress opposed to no progress at all, in his words. And my rebuttal to that was saying enough is enough. We shouldn't be accepting less from our legislators. We need to be making a demand, especially if they want our support, if they want our vote, then give me something in return. And it just can't be empty rhetoric. And we're not going to accept that anymore, the empty promises. So I'll let him know this is a way to make a line in the sand and say, this is it. Either you're going to do what we say, or we're going to separate and
we go nuclear.
We do it on our own. And I was introducing this idea to him, and he was becoming more embracing of it. And at this point, I believe that he is supportive of it. And again, with me having the opportunity to actually bring that to fruition, were I to be elected, that's definitely something that the powers that be would rather not see happen, because they want to continue to keep this under their control, and they want to continue to be able to dictate what we do with our own lives, instead of us being free thinkers and choosing for ourselves. So I did these interviews, and I'll continue to speak about.
We're going to load this one and see if it gets taken down.
Right.
I mean, we'll find out.
Let's cross our fingers.
Hey, I'm taking a risk, but I believe in it. In it. It's clearly there was a travesty here.
Absolutely.
Clearly a travesty with AB 392, the way that it was passed, and also the way it was packaged.
Yes.
I think you informed me that I was aware that they had tried this in 2019, and 2 days before they gutted the key legislation and passed it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said it was a great day for justice, and they hauled out all the politicians and said, oh, it's a great day for justice. And they ignored the fact that Dr. Calors and BLM, as you mentioned, pulled all support, and the families pulled support. Yes. So the communities you're supposed to be fighting on, who were the frontline activists, said, no, I'm not having anything to do with that.
Yeah.
But that didn't stop California politicians, who were all Democrats. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that's a Democrat
super majority.
Thing, but just the way it worked out, and they all went forward and said, justice is done. And did that strike you as, I think Sisyphean is the word, basically Janet two-faced?
Absolutely. Indeed. It was a slap in the face to not only myself, who saw the killing of Stephon Clark as being enough for me. I mean, as tragic as the killing of George Floyd was, and Breonna Taylor and Duncan Lemp and countless others since then, to me, the killing of Stephon Clark was one that resonated with me on a deeper level, to where I felt like, as a man, I needed to do something. And that's why I reached out to Devontae Clark to connect with him, to say, as tragic as this of an experience this has been for your family, work with me so we can stop this from happening to every other family. And one of the first things that I told him was, I don't want the same thing to happen to your brother to happen to my son or to me. You know, it's got to stop. And that was the last straw to me.
That's fucking. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
We'll bleep that out and edit it later.
That's real. That's real. You know, one of the things that, at least I see, a lot of California BLM activists do is they'll have these BLM signs, and then they'll have a kind of a modified version going Black and Brown Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. And what, at least in California, and I understand it's not the case everywhere in America, but in California, there are some cities where Latinos and African Americans are getting shot by the cops at the same number.
Oh no, if not, so Latinos are getting killed more.
And they're not, and as a Latino, we're not aware. Right. I don't see the same awareness amongst the Latinos that this is. And I go, look, there's certain cities where, I'm sorry, if you look Mexican and it's late at night, your chances of getting accidentally shot because we thought he had a gun are just as high.
Or beat. I mean, I used to live in Orange County, and one of the killings I heard about there was of a man named Fermin Valenzuela. He was beat by Anaheim police and basically put into a coma where he died. Same thing that happened to Kelly Thomas, a white man, homeless man living in Fullerton.
There you go.
And
there you go.
Beat to death by police officers. So it doesn't even take them shooting and killing you. Excessive force is excessive force. And if you are being pummeled by one officer or 15 officers, that's extreme. And it should be unnecessary. You know, we should be just as intolerant about these abuses of authority as they are when it comes to us as members of the public. So that's what I'm offering to do as a candidate, is basically apply that or require that each and every officer carries liability insurance. That way, if there is a lawsuit, it's coming out of their pocket opposed to taxpayers' pockets. And also remove the qualified immunity that protects them as officers. We actually have a police bill of rights in the state of California. So they have an extra layer of protection that gives them their own, bubble of protection versus the actual Bill of Rights, the constitutional Bill of Rights that protects us all. So why is there a need to separate them from us? And especially when they're the law enforcers. So if anything, they should be held accountable just as much as we are, if not at a higher standard.
Why do they need extra rights?
Exactly.
If they're enforcing the law, shouldn't the law work at premise?
Absolutely.
I know two people who've been beaten by the cops. One is a Caucasian man, good friend of mine up in the Bay Area, General Von Schrader, a.k.a. the Beowulf the Troll Slayer. That's his online handle. But, part of the reason that he does so much online activity was he was a chef. And he was confused to be someone else, and they beat him pretty bad to the point he can't walk normally anymore.
Oh my God.
Or use his hand. So he lost his career as a chef because you have to use your hands.
Of course.
So this hand doesn't work, and this leg doesn't work. And no, he's not dead. But he was beaten so badly, career options are off the table for him.
Exactly.
I met another man here in Fresno, Latino male. He didn't move back fast enough when the cops said to get back. They were arresting someone else, and he was like, hey, that's my friend. And I think he was filming it on his phone, and they were like, get back. And maybe he was 1 or 2 feet too close. Maybe he wasn't. But their problem was he didn't move away fast enough. So an officer said, I feel threatened by you. That's all he said. And the next thing he knows, he's in the air. Hands come out of the ground behind him, pick him up, and it was some 8-foot tall cop, grabbed him and slammed him on the car so hard, shattered his jaw, shattered this, shattered that. He's able to hold a job now, but for a year, basically the ability to do this was gone. Mm-hmm. And his crime was he didn't step back fast enough. They admit he didn't have a weapon. He wasn't the initial person they were talking about. He
Yeah.
didn't talk threateningly. He was standing there filming what he felt the police were abusing another person, and for that, I mean, that's life-changing.
Absolutely. Well, according to the law, anything an officer tells you to do is a lawful order. They can say, sit down, shut up. They can say, do 10 jumping jacks. And if you don't do what the hell they're doing, they can simply use that as a means to say you're not obeying a lawful order because they see themselves as being the law when they are not the law. They're the ones that's supposed to follow the law. They're the ones that are supposed to make sure that the laws that legislators and we the people have supported in creating are enforced. But them arbitrarily being able to use their badge and their position of authority to say what the law is and dictate that is definitely unconstitutional. It is unlawful, and it makes them de facto members of the state. In which case, we definitely should not be supporting of that in any way, shape, or form.
It's a real issue. One of the things that, if I drive around Fresno like this and my car's clean, no problem. But I go visit a buddy of mine. He lives roughly at Bullard, Herndon area. That's North Fresno. And I like to go to Woodward Park and work out. And I like to run the hills, and it gets a little dusty. So during summer, I was just wearing a tank top. Now, if I go run the hills, and then I get in my car, and there's dust on my car, and I'm wearing a tank top, and I have a little bit of dirt on me, and I drive through the exact same neighborhood in northern Fresno that I went through the night before wearing a suit, and my car was clean, suddenly I always find a police officer tailing me throughout the area until I leave.
Right.
When my car is clean and I wear a suit, there's no cops tailing me. I will see cops. They'll drive right by.
Mm-hmm.
When I look a little bit dirty and I'm wearing a tank top, still me. Still shaven, hair combed. No, you look a little bit too ethnic.
Yeah. And
we notice that cops follow you. Now, that's just me. And law-abiding citizen, I have family in law enforcement. Obviously, there's good law enforcement, but it's real.
Absolutely.
It's real, and I can only imagine people who look the part all the time and can't do a whole much for it, have to be living in terror every moment to just go home and go to work. And that's not freedom, and that's not how life should be in a good country.
Yeah, exactly.
Period.
Yeah, I met a Hispanic gentleman at a reopened California protest, and he's a local business owner, owns a tattoo shop.
Okay.
Hispanic gentleman. And that should tell you everything.
Where's this story going to go?
He's tatted up, from head to toe.
Yeah.
But, again, has several businesses here in Fresno, I think throughout the state. So he's not only a business owner, but he's a job provider to the people of this state.
And a taxpayer.
And a large taxpayer. If you have several businesses and they're making so much in revenue, then California is going to make sure they're getting as large of a chunk as possible. So he's a big contributor towards, our tax revenue here in the state. And he told me he's been assaulted by cops almost every time he goes out. He says, I literally have to tell them I just got pulled over for this yesterday. And leave me alone, pretty much. Because he's always profiled as being someone that's suspicious. And from what I was told by a Sacramento CHP officer, was everybody looks suspicious. So if we're training,
oh my God.
If law enforcement in the state is being trained to assume that everybody is suspicious for whatever reason, and to use that as guise to, again, go out, profile them, stop them, interrogate them, prevent them from going on about their business without being impeded in any way, shape, or form, then something's wrong with the way that these officers are being trained as well. So there definitely needs to be some retraining of law enforcement officials in the state of California. And that's exactly what I will be doing with my criminal justice reform policies.
I see it a little bit differently. I think the cops are being trained, from what I've seen, to anybody who's lower class or appears to be lower middle class.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Is a threat.
Well, another thing is they know that if the person actually challenges it and they have to go to court,
and you don't have money, what are you going to do?
Exactly. Versus the person that does look like they may have a lot of money or, some high-profile relationships or whatever the case may be. I saw a video where it was a white guy that had crashed his car somewhere in San Francisco. And the cops let him go. He was clearly drunk. You can look it up. It's a viral video. The guy was drunk, driving, crashed his car into several other parked cars. Cops let him go. Reason being is because he said, "My father is a senator." So the roots of corruption go very deep. It's not just the money that's keeping them in power. It's also them, again, feeling like their job may be threatened if they happen to arrest a certain person of profile.
I was at the Blackstone and Shields intersection, and my window had been smashed out, so I taped it up with clear tape. It looked really not very well done. And it was like right after 2 p.m., so it's right when the bar's out, and I was not paying attention, so I kind of swerved into the next lane. I wasn't drinking. I was not paying attention.
I'll take a drink to that.
I was not drinking. I was not under the influence of alcohol. I had swerved. So what happened was I was there at Shields and Blackstone, and the cops pull up next to me, and they start flashing their light through the window, like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, my window looks like garbage." And I just turn and I go, I said in my most business-friendly, what some people call white voice, I go, "Nothing going on here, officer. I'm having a good evening and returning home." And they go, "Okay, well, you get home safe, buddy."
Right.
And that was it. Now, my uncle, who always dresses well, but drives a lower income car and looks very Mexican. I understand I look visibly Caucasian to a lot of people. I'm Latino, but my uncle's a very dark-looking, ethnic-looking Mexican man. He always keeps that car clean. Always dresses in a polo shirt, perfectly ironed. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he always presents himself as clean and proper.
Respectable.
He was routinely stopped in Clovis.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, "Oh, we have a robbery out and you're a suspect." And he's like, "What?"
Right.
Like, what? He's like, "What? I would never rob something." And they're like, "Well, we heard something." And I think
Fit the description.
Yeah. And he's like, "I don't get to go to Clovis without worried that I'm going to be accused of a felony like murder or armed robbery. I don't know why. My car's clean. Tags are clean. I dress clean. I don't have a lot of money. My polo shirt's always ironed. I'm shaved. I just look really, really Mexican in a cheap older model Toyota. Why do I keep getting pulled over?"
Mm-hmm.
When I wear a suit in a clean car, I never get pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Why is that?
I was walking down the street going to work, and I got pulled over for fitting the description for a robbery. Now, I was working in the office at that time, so I'm wearing, slacks and a collared shirt, and this was actually in the winter, so I'm wearing a big overcoat. I have my lunch pail that I carry every day, a little lunch box that's blue,
Okay.
and I'm wearing blue headphones, and I'm carrying a blue umbrella, and I'm like, I fit the description? Did they say I had all of this? I'm 6'4". At that time, I had, dreadlocks down to my shoulders, and I started to ask him, why are you stopping me over? Stopping me? Is it because I'm black? And one of the officers said yes. And within, I would say 30 seconds, I was in handcuffs and thrown in the back of the police car. And of course, within an hour, they had released me after finding out, of course, I wasn't the person they were looking for. And I ended up suing Fullerton and getting awarded $100,000. So, and I was running for Fullerton City Council. I let people know, I will sue you, Fullerton. and I will take your tax dollars, or you can elect me city council, and I'll just make sure we get rid of corrupt guys like this police officer. And they chose to just pay me. So it's a change in mindset, and that's what I'm saying as far as us being able to get conversations like these to be heard by more people. Because if they actually see and hear what's going on in their own community opposed to what they're reading in news reports or what's being reported by the television, then maybe they'll think twice. You know, not all of these interactions with police officers are valid, are lawful. So when it comes to the guise of law and it being enacted upon us, if these lawmakers or law enforcers aren't going to abide by the same laws, what's the point of it? Here in Fresno, I just read a story about a man that was hit by a police officer, a CHP officer, who ran a stop sign and crashed into a car. He wasn't in a high-speed chase. He wasn't in pursuit of anyone. He wasn't even on call. He just was speeding, ran a stop sign, and killed this 69-year-old man just recently. So why is it that if that happened to us, we'd be in jail?
Right.
Of course. And
right.
If not under the jail. Meanwhile, this CHP officer is out on paid administrative leave until they complete an investigation. And the son, who lost his father, said, why are we allowing the CHP to investigate themselves? He's absolutely right.
Yes. They allowed the police to police the police.
Right.
And my response was, please. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. There's a lot of good cops. Obviously, we need law enforcement. Obviously, you need law and order. What we're talking about is that there is a clear ability for people to abuse
Absolutely.
the incredible power they have, basically carte blanche, and get away with it. And in this democracy, in this government, there's nothing that we the people really get to do about that other than just kind of complain and have misery for ourselves. Like
right.
The two people that I know that had their lives changed by beaten by the
I hate to interrupt.
Well, one of them tried, and he was told, we're not going to really get anywhere because there's no real evidence.
See?
You look like a gangbanger. He couldn't even get any lawyers to do it. The other guy was previously homeless, and he was Caucasian, but he was homeless, and so that basically meant,
right.
You're homeless. No one's going to
contact
believe
Greg
you.
Peacock. He'll fight for you. Trust
me.
me.
Peacock.
Greg Peacock. He was the best attorney that I came across, and pretty much was told the same thing. He's told that by so many different people that have been assaulted by police officers.
It's not right. I mean, if you're...
They think it's a lost cause, and they see it as a civil rights abuse as being a uphill battle. So unless you have tons of money to pay for an attorney, a high-profile attorney that's willing to fight that for you, it seems as if you have to lose your life in order for there to be any type of financial compensation, because it's not even justice getting a lawsuit payment. I don't feel justified by getting the money that I received from the city of Fullerton. Right. What I did feel justified by is me ended up finding out that cop had retired. I wish he had gotten fired, but instead was given the opportunity to retire, and now is collecting a pension from we the people of California, taxpayers. But he's no longer out there threatening people of the public.
That's
at
least
position.
Good. That's at least good.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to take a stance on that. I'll just say that's why the original AB 392 law was very powerful. It was going to make it where the onus on the police was to make sure that they were doing the right thing. And they wouldn't just go, well, I'm a cop, tough. Exactly. They had to actually show it. And that's why those three key provisions we talked about were removed so that we don't have to do this. Because right now that bill was going to make it where every cop had to justify their actions. And now you have to justify your actions.
Right.
If you were abused, you have to prove that you were actually abused. So the difficulty's on you.
Right.
And this would have put the difficulty on the system, which would have radically changed the justice system as we've never seen before. So again, there are some good cops. obviously the police we need, but clearly there's some sort of accountancy problem.
Exactly.
I'll say, and it ain't getting fixed by whatever they passed recently.
No, the empty laws.
Yeah. Okay. I'm almost out here, so I gotta go feed my addiction. Last two thoughts. Looking at this election, looking at everything you've done in the last year, what do you think are two key conclusions that people watching this should be aware of, that they maybe aren't thinking of? Obviously, and I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way if I may, he's running for governor, libertarian, running on a, libertarian principles, California values, low taxes, low regulation. He is registering as a Republican because they changed the system. It's the only way to run. So I got that out of the way. What I want to talk to the philosopher. Two things. You folks in California need to know this. Maybe you didn't pick up on it. Somehow, something you've noticed, and maybe it's reflective of the election. You follow politics. You have some insight into this. What are two things that you've noticed and somehow relate to this election that you're pretty sure people aren't picking up on, or is it being talked about enough? Mm-hmm. Ignore me and speak right to the public, please.
Sure. Well, those two things I would say first is that overwhelming majority is sick of the two-party system. They're sick of the rhetoric tossed about between Republicans and Democrats. They're sick of the empty promises. And those people, although they are still the silent majority, were not present in this current election with the president. Even though you had a record number of people, come out and vote for either Trump or Biden or whatever the case may be, they still only reflect about 25% of our entire population. So you're not motivating, more than half of the country to even get behind and support you. But yet they're still living under those policies. So those people definitely should be inspired to vote next time around if they're given a great third option, I believe. So that's definitely coming. It's probably one election cycle away from having a libertarian president. Another thing I would say is people are sick of being taxed. They see what's happening with their money, and they're very aware that the buying power of our dollar is losing its strength. And
ooh, that's good.
Especially with, I guess, the growing concerns about the development of socialism in our country. I speak with Trump supporters all the time, and they say, well, I hate socialists. I hate Biden because he's proposing socialist, policies and changes. Well, Trump actually is a big socialist. If you look at what he did with bailing out, these companies, corporations, large businesses with our tax dollars during this coronavirus lockdown, that is a socialist, approach to dealing with the situation, opposed to a conservative would have said, hey, you're a business, you took that risk, hang in there, things will get better, and, this money belongs to the taxpayers, the hardworking people of this country, not you. But he did give money to Pfizer and Kodak, which is a film company, to create a vaccine.
This is what I was hoping for.
Yeah, so he gave them money to help development of the vaccine, when again, these are multi-million-dollar companies, billion-dollar companies. If
they don't have the cash.
Exactly.
Okay.
Not to mention companies like Moderna also received money, taxpayer money, for development of a vaccine. But if you look at their stock profile right now, it's going up and up and up. So they're going to be, they're profiting off of the suffering of we the people. And even though they're trying to make it seem like this coronavirus is a serious threat and we need to be
we don't want to get cut by YouTube,
right?
let's keep it on the politics side.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Well, when we're talking
I
about
love you,
the
Sam,
vaccine,
but I ain't doing it. So.
When we talk about a vaccine or development of a vaccine, we need to be wary because, again, it's being fast-tracked. It is something that is being funded by taxpayers, and when it boils down to our money and where it's being invested, it's not going into the pockets of the people that need it right now. You have people that have families and aren't able to put food on their table or keep their lights on, or even able to keep a roof over their heads. They're facing evictions and foreclosures of their homes that they've owned and have lived in for years. So we definitely should be making sure that we're focusing on the priority here, which is making sure that our body is taken care of. And the public body right now is suffering. So pretty soon they're going to scream out in pain. And I see that that bellowing starting at this time. It's only going to grow louder as time goes on.
Well said. Well said. Okay. I have one last question. I know I said I didn't. But one last one, and I was at a protest recently, and I asked all the people there. So Joe Biden said, this election is about the soul of America. 48% voted for Trump.
Yeah.
Now, when I was at that protest the other day, they're going, Trump doesn't represent America. His values don't represent America. That's not America. And they had their flags, and I go, okay. So just under half said it does, and you're saying that's not true? So if I paint, don't call me blue.
Right.
How dare you say I'm blue? Well, it's only 48% of me's painted blue. It's going to look like half. Am I wildly out of line saying that, what are you talking about? This isn't America.
Yeah.
They didn't want to hear it. They were like, he doesn't represent our values. And they go, but 48%.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're seeing that too. Now they go, okay, well, so to me, I believe Joe Biden. I think the vote was a indication of the soul of the country. And apparently just under half of America likes what Trump had to say.
Yeah. Well, also, we're in the mindset that we got to vote between the lesser of the two evils.
Sure.
So it's still evil, nonetheless.
Sure.
You got evil flavored A and evil flavored B. You know? And it's unfortunate that you have a lot of people choosing evil opposed to good. And that's why I feel like, again, the majority of people that have not participated in this election cycle don't want to be involved in choosing evil. They want to keep their conscience clear. So Biden is right. This election is about the soul of our country, but not everybody in our country feels as if we need to have a part of our soul be engulfed in hatred and vitriol and disgust. And that's what the two-party represents, is that hatred for one another. And we don't believe that. I voted third party. I vote for
Joe Jorgensen.
Exactly. And that's because I didn't want to feel like I had a dog in that fight. And I wanted to pick the good guy, you know, and that's what we should be focusing on. It's not a throwing away your vote, and people want to say, oh, you helped Trump win, or you helped Biden win, or you helped them lose, or whatever the case may be. All right, fine. Well, when a libertarian wins, you can blame them for your losses, you know, because that's what it's going to come to sooner or later. If we don't have our opportunity to do so here in California in 2022, as I said, you may want to expect that in 2024 for the next presidential
I definitely
election.
see a shift. The gas tax that passed here in California was popular. They almost shut it down the very next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 3 years ago. And then this year you see yeah, Californians are not going to put up with Trump, but they also are pushing back on higher taxes, and they definitely wanted to help out independent business owners.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to see.
Hey, rent control. You would think that would
yeah,
be a big one.
Yeah.
And as many people supported it, and the Democratic Party poured tens of millions of dollars into making sure that it passed, it got shot down here in the state.
I feel, and the only word that I know for pro-business, low taxes, but California values is libertarian, because it ain't Republican, in my opinion. So I understand you have to run for the party, but I mean, so last question, and this is the other one I asked the people there. They said, well, one candidate is for division and the other's saying he's for everybody, and he's going to bring everybody together and heal everything. So given that 48% of the country said they like Trump, is Joe Biden going to bring America together?
Not at all. And that's an empty promise also, because you're never going to be able to make everybody happy. The only way that you have to, the only way that you're ever going to be able to make everybody happy is just by doing your job. And I think they underestimate that, because they think that if they appease one side or the other, that's going to give them the advantage for the next election. That's all they pay attention to, is making sure that they stay career politicians by appeasing enough of Group A to get them reelected the next time around, versus getting in there, doing their job, and whether Group A or Group B likes it or hates it, all they can say is, I did my job. I did what you hired me to do. And if that's not enough, next election, get me out of here. That's what I'm offering to do as a candidate. I know I'm going to be making legislative changes and, reforming policies that is going to upset some people.
Sure.
But my job is to make sure that I'm abiding by my constitutional oath, which is making sure that I'm protecting the people of California from all threats, domestic and foreign. And also making sure that I'm able to balance the books the way that they should be, instead of overtaxing and misappropriating funds collected by, the working class people.
Yeah. Last question. This is the last one, I promise. So
last.
This election, Joe Biden's barely going to meet Trump. Joe Biden's going to barely beat the other guy. And it's roughly close to the votes that California had. So meaning that, he's able to say I beat Trump, but it's because of California. Right. Which means outside of California, it's damn close to 50% or 51% of Americans liked Trump, which means outside of California, a majority of America likes Trump.
Right.
And the thing I like to point out to people in 2016, whether they go, Trump lost the popular vote, and I go, no, he didn't. I go, whoa, yeah, he didn't. I go, outside of California, he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Hillary won because of California alone, which means outside of California, a majority of our fellow Americans like Trump. So as a Californian who supports California values, how do you feel about the fact that 2 elections in a row, a majority of Americans said they like what that guy is? Does that make you comfortable as an American?
Not at all. If anything, that inspires me more to want to secede because it's a embracing of all of what I feel like America doesn't reflect. America really is about unity. It is about community. It is about strength and loyalty to country, not the government, and of course, we want to make sure that we're able to feed our families and, provide for ourselves. So nobody likes taxes at all. So to be seduced into the idea that we need to continue to be taxed in order to have roads,
right.
Or parks or whatever the case may be, it's just a false statement. And it's a false sense of security for those people that think that that's what they're voting for, when really it's not. So in my time in California, because I've lived here for over 20 years from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I've...
Don't you know?
All right. Not everybody speaks.
So
That's more
I'm sorry.
Minnesota.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the Wisconsin, Minnesota cultural region. I did not mean to cross-reference or
northern Wisconsin, maybe. I'm
sorry.
But yeah, being a Californian, since I spent the majority of my life as a human here in California, I see that the majority of the people here in the state, that's what they want. They want to be that American exceptionalism, but in the true sense, we don't want to live that lie anymore. We don't want to be under that false misconception that, being the home of the brave, when we're really all just living in the name of fear. So how do you stop that trend in its development and its growth? It's by, again, getting somebody in a position of leadership that reflects that. Our current governor definitely does not reflect that, because over this coronavirus thing, which he told us would kill millions of people in the state of California, hasn't. But millions of people have suffered because of the lockdown.
Right.
The lockdown rules and procedures, I guess, that he's imposed upon us, and we'll continue to have to suffer because of that, unless we get away from thinking that a Democrat is going to solve that problem for us. So, with me running as a Libertarian Republican now, hopefully people will see that I'll be that different option that they're looking for.
Yeah. We'll end it there. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, pleasure indeed, my man.
Pleasure.
Good speaking with you.
Okay. Well, you heard it here. You can check out Nickolas Wildstar, Governor Wildstar.
Wildstar2022.com.
And we're going to try to do more interviews as the election unfolds, and interview other people who follow politics. And we hope that this video will be allowed to be loaded and not mysteriously
cross your
disappear.
fingers.
So,
make it viral before they delete it.
We'll see. Okay.